Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
One of the reasons that Cantor Lutz and Lauren Roth, our intern, began the service this evening with Eli Eli, a little more somber note than you might expect on Shabbat. But this Shabbat happens to be sandwiched between three modern Jewish holidays. Last week, we acknowledged Yom HaShoah, and then coming up next week, we will have Yom HaZikaron, which is the memorial day for the soldiers and others who have died in defense of the state of Israel, as well as victims of terror, and ultimately celebrating Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel's Independence Day. So we're going to hear some stunning music, acknowledging both the difficulty, the sadness, while at the same time the uplifting feeling of Shabbat, and combine together all of the rush of all the waters and the emotions available to us as human beings. So I invite you to join us here, and those of you participating from a little bit away in our service. We begin together on page 8, and I invite you to join me. I begin with a prayer of gratitude for all that is holy in my life. God needs no words, no English or Hebrew, no semantics and no services, but I need them. Through prayer, I can sense my inner strength, my inner purpose, my inner joy, my capacity to love. As I reach upward in prayer, I sense those qualities in my Creator. To love God is to love each other, to work to make our lives better. To love God is to love the world God created and to work to perfect it. To love God is to love dreams of peace and joy that illumine all of us and to bring that vision to life. Going to welcome Ari, who is having his bar mitzvah tomorrow, with his brother Adam and parents, Sam and Baharet, to join us. As we light Shabbat candles, you'll find the blessing on page 2. May I ask that you all please rise.
Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom. Let's wish someone next to you a Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Enjoy tomorrow, every moment.
You may be seated. Oh, a kiss. Very nice. Words of joy, celebration, page 16. Zamru Ladonai, sing unto God. And let's celebrate Shabbat. We'll officially welcome Shabbat on page 20, the words of Lecha Dodi. This is a melody you might know. It's a Shnira Lepera Nigun. It's a very, very well-known old Yiddish nigun that my dear friend Cantor Josh Breitzer put to the words of Lecha Dodi. So if you think you don't know it, trust me, you know it. You'll catch on, sing along, Lecha Dodi, a Yiddish melody for so many were forgotten in the Shoah. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, pnei Shabbat, nekabela. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, pnei Shabbat, לקראת כלה בני שבת נקבלה לכבודי לקראת כלה בני שבת נקבלה לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה כי מקור הברכה מראש מקדם וסוכה סוף מעשה ומחשבה תחילה לכבודי לקראת כלה בני שבת נקבלה לכבודי לקראת כלה בני שבת נקבלה התעוררי התעוררי כי בעורף קומי אורי 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 שיר דברי כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה לכבודי לקראת כלה בני שבת נקבלה לכבודי לקראת כלה בני שבת נקבלה בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה גם בשמחה ובצהלה תוך אמוני עם סגולה בואי חלה בואי חלה לך דודי לקראת כלה בני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת כלה בני שבת נקבלה ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בדברו מעריב ערבים בחוכמה פותח שערים ובתבונה משנה עיתים ומחליף את הזמנים ומסדר את הכוכבים במשמרותיהם ברקיע כרצונו בורא יום ולילה כולל אור מפני חושך וחושך מפני אור קיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב ערבים. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. 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 ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
Even though we just commemorated and celebrated Passover, the holiday of freedom, we remind ourselves not only of Pesach, how fortunate we are to be free, but literally in every prayer service. The Micha Mocha, page 40.
Words of comfort and shelter and warmth. Hashkivenu. Let there be love and understanding. and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms.
One of the ways we express that love is for saying a prayer for those who are in need of healing. The Misha Berach, it occurs to me, is an unusual prayer because it's both communal. We say it for our community, but we also say it personally for someone who we particularly thinks is in need of this prayer. You'll find it on page 253.
Shabbat Avotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak, veYaakov. Mi Shabbat Imotenu, Sarah, Rivka, Leah, veRachel. May the one who blessed our mothers, blessed our fathers, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, hear our prayer, and bless us as well. Bless us with the power of your healing. Bless us with the power of your hope. Be filled with understanding and strengthened by the power of your love. Bless us with a vision for tomorrow. Help us to reach out to those in pain. May your warmth of friendship ease our sorrow. Give us courage, give us faith, show us the way. And bless us as well.
Pages 48 through 62, the opportunity for personal prayer and collective prayer the Amidah, the silent Amidah. We ask that you rise. When your prayers are completed, please be seated. Again, pages 48 through 62.
Page 62.
Ratzon, Ivri
So as I mentioned at the outset of the service, after the beautiful introduction of Eli, Eli, that this is an unusual Shabbat in that it falls between three modern Jewish holidays. Modern day Yom HaShoah, last week, or a few days ago, Holocaust Remembrance Day, Yom HaZikaron, which is the day in Israel to remember the soldiers who helped establish the day of Israel, state of Israel, who defended the state of Israel, and recently were acted victims of terror, that we memorialize them as well. And then the next day, we go from the sadness of that day to the joy of Yom HaAtzmaut, which is Israel's Independence Day. My wife is there right now. She told me she's there with a bunch of other people, and they're looking forward to what is going to be a special time. So we decided that we would each take one question about each of the holidays. And so I'm going to share a question with that Cantor Lutz. She'll respond, and I'll respond, and then we'll go to each holiday and just the thought here and there, right?
Lovely.
Okay, so here's my first question, Cantor Lutz. Cantor Lutz for 200. It's So looking back and thinking about Yom HaShoah, is there a lesson that you've learned from the Shoah or from a survivor that has shaped your life?
Well, as a Jew, I've done so much reading on the Holocaust, and there were times in my life where I felt such a need to learn about it in order that I might understand it. And of course, I still haven't gotten to that place. But it almost at times can become an obsession,
Yes.
right? To go through periods where you will read voraciously about it, so that you might be able to understand how human beings could treat each other in such a way. So I haven't been able to understand it, but with that, I think of three things. One, I think, and I heard Michelle say on Tuesday, that we can't be bitter. Even when the most horrific things happen in our world, we can't stay in that place of pain and bitterness. That doesn't mean that we have to deny it or push it down and not feel it, but we have to move forward from it. And I think, living in Los Angeles, right, I hear people all the time feeling bitter. I don't have this. I don't have enough. I'm not enough. It's not a good place to be in. So to hear someone who's survived such atrocities not be bitter is a real inspiration to me. And she also said, if you see something, say something,
Yes.
right? Sort of like
She
on the
did.
subway. If you see someone doing something wrong, speak up, right? And it doesn't have to be in an abrasive way or in an aggressive way, right? On social media, we see so many people calling each other out for things. I don't think she meant it in that way. It's more like, whenever I see someone drop a piece of trash, first of all, I assume they're good intentions. I assume that they didn't mean to drop the trash. But I often run after them, and I'll say, do you see that you dropped that? Instead of picking it up for them, right? Because I want them to be responsible for what they're doing. So it can be on the smallest scale. Sure. And you can assume that someone is doing something for good, even if you see that they're doing something bad. You don't have to jump down their throat. And then lastly, I think I've just learned the importance of family. When Michelle was talking about her brother, he stole a Nazi uniform. He spoke perfect German. He got her out of a camp. The love that her brother had for her and the amount of danger he must have put himself in, I'm really lucky because I know my brother loves me that way. So I just think, what are we if we don't have family? What are we if we don't have each other? What about you?
So I want to pick up on something that you said in quoting her about not feeling bitter. She said that she and her husband, she was a survivor who spoke to our children in our congregation on Tuesday. And she said, we decided we weren't going to be victims, we were going to be survivors. And I think that's a very important philosophy to have in life, because victims destroy, people who are bitter destroy, but people who are grateful tend to want to build up. So I just fully agree with you. I do think, by the way, if one has an obsession reading about the Shoah, it's a good obsession. What better obsession to have than to read about evil? That leads me to a lesson that I think we should learn as a world. You have to fight evil. If you don't fight evil, it proliferates. And it's an evil that unfortunately we've seen other times ever since then, not only to Jews, of course. Jews are what we're focusing on now, and appropriately so. So I think that's the second lesson, that you have to fight evil. And the third thing that I often think about when I meet a survivor, and I'm blown away at how happy they seem and well-adjusted they seem, and how they came from whatever they experienced, which is unimaginable, to having children and raising a family and going to work and building a society and being good people who cared about making this world a better place. And I think, wow, we often think, are there miracles in the world today? And I think they're walking miracles. I really think many of them are walking miracles. Because if we had met any of them when they had been liberated in 1945 or wherever they were when the war ended, if someone would have said to them, some of you will be in America or in Israel, 65, 75 years later, and you will have gone to work and raised a family and maybe had children and grandchildren, they would have said inconceivable. So I think they're inspirational to all of us. And as I said, I'm not the only one to say this, but we are the last generation who will ever meet a Holocaust survivor. So if you have the privilege of meeting one, take a few minutes and ask them some questions.
I think I hugged Michelle about 80 times.
You did. I noticed that.
With her consent. But
Right, absolutely.
I just didn't want to let her go. It was almost like she wasn't real.
So let's look at Yom HaZikaron, Israel's Memorial Day. We have a Memorial Day here in the United States.
Right.
How is it experienced in Israel that might be different than its experience here in the United States?
Such a good question because it's so different. Right, if you think of Memorial Day in America, we think of barbecues and sales, sort of a light July 4th, which is not to say that there's anything wrong with that. I think in America, we have a privilege, at least my generation. I know many veterans, American veterans. Both of my grandfathers were veterans. Our dear friend, Rabbi Josh Noble, is a veteran. And thank God I don't know personally, people of my generation who've passed away in service to our country. In Israel, that is not a privilege that anyone has.
Right.
Everybody knows somebody and is related to somebody who has lost their life in service to the state of Israel. And just having lived there for a year for my cantorial studies, on that day, right, Tali, the whole country stops. The siren goes off, and everyone, I have the chills just thinking about it. It's a moment of just community. Everybody knows how everybody else feels. Can you imagine what our world would be like if people were so empathetic to each other, so understanding, so sharing of a feeling, even a tragic one?
Right. Well, I think you said something important. There was a ritual established. Holidays that don't have rituals tend to lose their meaning. So one of the reasons I think Passover is so meaningful to people is there's a clear ritual of Passover with the Seder.
Right.
July 4th, American Independence Day, has no ritual. So they'll do a few things, they'll go to the park, they'll have a barbecue. Memorial Day, similarly. If we took people to the graves of veterans, they would probably feel a lot differently, people who died. The other thing is Israel's constantly under threat. So there is this tremendous appreciation. America is fortunate. Part of it is geography, part of it is strength. Most of the time we don't feel physically threatened. And I think as a result, we may not fully appreciate our veterans as much as those who've lost their lives. But I'll tell you, for me, one particularly moving moment is when I went to Normandy. And if you've been to the beaches of Normandy, many of you have certainly seen it if you've not been there on video and stuff, and you see the graves, the crosses, the Mogen Davids for these young men, 17, 18, 25, some older, who knew they were going to die. I just finished a book about this called The Nazi Conspiracy, which talks about what happened at Normandy in some detail. And I remember being there and just having tears in my eyes for people who I know fought for liberty. So I think that you're absolutely right. Here we tend to take it not quite as seriously. I also think in Israel there's a sense of pride in being an Israeli. That used to be true for Americans. I think it's waning, unfortunately. I hope it will come back, but I think when it does, there'll be a greater sense of appreciation. So last question, because it's let's leave on a high. Yom HaAtzmaut, right? That's the celebratory. If you're going to be in Israel for one day, that's the day you want to certainly try to be in Israel. It's Israel's Independence Day. So I wanted to ask you, did you have a memorable moment in Israel during that year or any other time that you've been there?
Sure. I'm actually thinking of Yom HaAtzmaut because it sort of feels like the clock strikes midnight and
right.
Israel turns back into a pumpkin because
Yeah.
it's Yom HaZikaron, right? You go to Har Herzl, you see the graves of all these great people. Everyone is somber. The siren goes off. All of what we talked about, Yom HaZikaron. And then immediately at sundown, the entire country's energy shifts into celebration. And it, honestly, for me as an American Jew, it was kind of a shock to the system. But it was an experience that I'll never, ever forget. And I was with all my classmates, and everyone's wearing white and waving flags and celebrating raucously. And it's just, there's nothing like it. It's so amazing. But what's left to me is the juxtaposition of how you started speaking, right? Which is we live both with tragedy and joy. I think that's really what it is to be a Jew. And to see that manifest was just incredible.
Which also shows, by the way, you can control your emotions. You're feeling sad, and then all of a sudden you realize, you know what? I'm going to turn it around and be happy. So since I knew the question, I decided to think about a memorable moment for me. And it was when my wife and I took our children to Israel for the first time. And let's see, Josh, this was 2005, so Josh was 11 and Daniel was 7. And we did what most do when they have the first trip to Israel. We went to the Kotel, to the Western Wall. And I was watching my 2 sons walk across the plaza to the wall. And I decided to stand back and watch them from behind. And this is pre-smartphones. I had a video camera on my shoulder. There's a tradition that you put little notes in the wall. So I wrote about that in Monday's Kavanah. You're going to hear different of our members of our clergy wrote next week about Israel. So my children, they were in school here. All of their classmates had written little notes. And they were there to deliver them prayers. And they had them in little plastic bags, those, baggies or whatever they're called, right? And they're walking towards the wall, and I'm standing behind them maybe 10 feet. I'm crying so hard, the video camera is shaking. I could hardly get a picture in. And as I was leaving my house tonight to come here, I remembered in our living room there's a picture. So I brought it. I have the picture of my 2 sons. I don't think you can see it here, but approaching there, putting their, they're this high, each with kippot, and that was the first time they've been to Israel. Daniel, my younger son, has since spent 6 months living in Israel, and when I picked him up from the airport, it's part of the Tiferet program at Milken, this was many years ago, I said, Daniel, how was your trip? And these were his words to me. He said, Daddy, living in Israel is consequential. You know what?
Amen.
Absolutely right. Thank you, Cancer Class.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi. Wow. Welcome. Thank you for being with us.
God bless you.
God bless
Thank you
you.
for being us.
Well, if you'll permit me, I have a piece to share. You have the words with you. I thought this would be a beautiful piece for Shabbat between Yom HaShoah and Yom HaAtzmaut. It's a song, At Moledet. The word laledet means to give birth. And it's a poem written by Leah Goldberg, famous Israeli poet before Israel was even Israel. It was written in 1938 and set to music by Mark Lavry and performed as an oratorio in Tel Aviv. So if you can imagine what it was like to be a Jew in 1938 and hear this piece and to yearn for a homeland, At Moledet, literally home, laledet, a mother. And I haven't sung this piece since I've been a mom, so I'll try to get through it. But it's a beautiful piece yearning for our place. Al hahar metapsim hashvilim b'merchak pa'ambon hagmalim b'mish'ol mul parochet halel tzel berosha riri mitpalel al hahar metapsim hashvilim at moledet le'or levana at kmo ima zocheret et bena חלונך שנפתח מול דממה לא ידע תרדמה חלונך שנפתח מול דממה לא ידע תרדמה על ידינו קוצי הצבור, על שפתינו חיוך אין דבר, ובשרנו כואב ואוהב את מגע את מתיחת צורים. על ידינו קוצי הצבור. את מולדת לאור לבנה, את כמו אמא זוכרת את בנה. חלונך שנפתח בדממה, לא ידע תרדמה. את מולדת לאור לבנה, את כמו אמא זוכרת את בנה. חלונך שנפתח מול דממה, לא ידע תרדמה.
Page 258. Please join me in a prayer for our country, the bottom of the page. O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace. May we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and spirit. Amen. bottom of page 259. Please join me. O Heavenly One, Protector and Redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love. Spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. Amen.
Please rise. Kolot balevav benima, nefesh Yehudi omiyah, ulfate Mizrach kadima, ayin letzion Sophia. Od lovta tikvatenu, atikva bat shnot habayim, להיות חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים. להיות חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים.
If you'll remain standing for the Kiddush, you'll find it on page 5.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho be'ahuvat ratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lemasei v'reishit, ki hu yom techila lemikrae kodesh, zecher letziat Mitzrayim, ki vanu b'charta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'anim, ve'shabbat kodshecha ve'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. Amen.
Invite you to continue to rise for the Aleinu, page 282.
Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא זמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר
As we have recognized that we certainly acknowledge and indeed experience the many different emotions, the highs and the lows, this is one of those that's in between. It's mixed. We are grateful for the people who've shaped our lives, those whom we've loved, but we also acknowledge the sadness that they're not physically here. We invite those of you who are within the first week observing Shiva to rise. If it's the first 30 days since the loss of a loved one, you're invited to rise. If you are in the first year of mourning, you are invited to rise. If you're here this evening observing a yahrzeit, we invite you to rise. And we invite those in the congregation who would like to also stand to do so as well. You'll find the Mourner's Kaddish on page 294. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach hirutei v'amlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dekol Beit Yisrael, v'agala u'v'izman kariv v'imru. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam almai almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpo'ar v'yitroman v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmeid kudsha richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata ta'almiran be'alma v'imru Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayin aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. May God, who creates harmony on high, bring peace to us and to all Israel. Together we say, Amen.
You can have a seat for just a moment. Just want to thank all of our staff who made tonight possible, our production team and our amazing musicians. Tali and Jeff, thank you so much. Thank you, Lauren. We only get Lauren for one more month, so we're just going to enjoy her before she goes back to New York to finish cantorial school. We're just so lucky that you've spent this year with us. And thank you, Rabbi, for leading the service and for putting me in the hot seat. I know you know what a good interviewer he is, so it's a privilege to be interviewed by you. And thank you all for being here for this Shabbat. And Ari, we're so excited to celebrate you tomorrow. It's going to be an incredible day. Let's conclude our service tonight on page 343. Oziv Zimrat Yah, words that we need during this week between Yom HaShoah and Yom HaAtzmaut. Words of hope and strength and community and salvation. Why don't you rise and sing with us? Page 343. Oziv Zimrat Yah, Vayehi Lishua. Oziv Zimrat Yah, Vayehi Lishua. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.